Hey guys, it's Bethany K with a new photography tutorial for you today. I'm always talking about why you need to take your digital SLR camera off auto and really learn how to change the settings yourself in manual mode. So today I actually wanted to post the first lesson in my camera guide DVD that tells you everything you need to know about shutter speed. So I hope you enjoy the first lesson on shutter speed and stay tuned for the next lesson where you're going to learn everything you need to know about f-stop.
The biggest benefit of your SLR is that you get to control how much light enters your camera, which means you get to determine the exposure of your picture. Now when we talk about getting a good exposure, what does that mean? Well, it means that whatever the focus of your image is, it's not too bright, not too dark, but just right. So there are 3 settings you'll need to learn about to control the light getting into your camera: shutter speed, aperture, also called f-stop, and ISO, or light sensitivity. Each of these has a different effect on your picture, and we'll go over the pros and cons of letting in more light with each one. Your shutter speed refers to how long the shutter is left open to let in light when you capture your picture. The longer it's open, the more light is let in. The faster your shutter closes, the less light you're letting in. Check your camera's quick start guide for the dial that changes the shutter speed on your specific camera model and where you'll see the speed on your information screen. At a number like 60, it means the shutter is open for 1/60th of a second, and as you turn the shutter faster, the number 80 means the shutter is open for 1/80th of a second, so it's shutting faster. As you turn down the shutter and go slower than 1/4 of a second, you will see these symbols here. This means 1 whole second, and as you slow your shutter even more, the numbers will get larger, meaning your shutter is staying open even longer than a second, thus closing even slower. Your shutter speed affects both how much light is getting into the camera and whether or not the motion in your picture is frozen or blurred. At a fast shutter speed of 1/6400th of a second, our camera froze the motion of this water droplet, capturing it mid-air. But when you use a slower shutter speed, the camera captures the full motion of whatever passes through your frame during that time, giving you a motion blur effect. Water serves as a great example of how using a faster or slower shutter speed will give you entirely different effects in your picture. When you use a shutter speed of 1/125th of a second to capture this stream, you get a simple picture that more or less freezes the motion of the water. But when you slow it down to 1/4 of a second, you're able to capture the movement of the water passing through the frame, giving your water a nice creamy effect. Now let's say, for example, that you wanted to capture this child on a swing. With a faster shutter speed, you'll be able to freeze the motion at a single point in time, getting a clear image of the child swinging. But if you were to use a slower shutter speed in this situation, you'd get a motion blur that you don't really want. So in every situation, you need to be aware of your shutter speed and what it's doing to your picture. You especially need to be cautious about motion blur in poor lighting conditions, as you can see from this picture, taken with a camera on automatic settings. If your shutter speed is 1/60th of a second or slower, and you're capturing moving people, you'll end up with an image like this. Now there are 2 things that can cause motion blur when you're slowing the shutter speed to capture more light. First, when your subjects are moving through the frame, creating a motion blur, and second is the natural movement you as the photographer are making as you push the shutter, also called camera shake. The amount of camera shake you get increases the more zoomed in you are, and this is a good example of when you shouldn't let your camera choose the shutter speed. So when you're shooting indoors with low lighting, make sure you have your shutter speed fast enough to freeze the motion to keep out unwanted motion blur. Now if you're trying to use the motion of a subject to create a cool effect, like the motion of a waterfall, remember to have the camera on a tripod and set a timer to avoid the camera shake that comes with a slow shutter speed. This makes it so that only the moving subject is blurred and the rest of your image is nice and sharp. Now let's go back to the child on the swing. If you move the camera with your subject, you'll get an entirely different effect where all the motion in the frame is happening in the background while your subject stays clear. So remember that a slower shutter speed lets in more light, and a faster shutter speed lets in less light. But the catch to getting more light with the shutter is that you sometimes get motion blur that you may or may not want depending on your situation. So let's have you grab your camera and we're going to actually put this into practice. For your first assignment, we're going to be using manual mode, which is usually indicated on your camera dial with an M. We'll go into more detail about the camera modes in a minute, but for now, we're just going to practice taking a few different pictures at slower and faster shutter speeds. Now you'll notice the picture getting brighter and darker at different shutter speeds, but don't worry about the exposure just yet. So go ahead and turn on the water on your kitchen faucet or find some other moving subject and pause the video while you take a few different pictures at slower and faster shutter speeds.
So hopefully this video helped you understand a little bit more about shutter speed and you were able to get out and put it into practice. Stay tuned for the next video where I'm going to teach you everything you need to know about f-stop. Thanks for watching and I hope to see you in the next video.